So good evening to those of you who are present for finding out a bit more about what is going to happen in the community here as a result of the 101 project. My name is Leo Scott. I work for the consulting company Gray Bowen Scott. I am the project manager on behalf of the San Mateo County Transportation Authority and the City and County Association of Governments. And I have a counterpart who's not here tonight, Nadal Tukan with Caltrans, who is the Caltrans project manager, and he's represented tonight by Mohammed Suleiman, sitting here right in the front row. So the group of staff that are here are a combination of consultants who participated in the design effort, Caltrans design staff, as well as Caltrans construction staff, and then our contractor, Kiewit. And so they will be available to answer questions, as some of you have already asked questions at the stations. But what I'd like to do is actually go through in a fairly quick way a set of slides to help you understand a bit about the project and to introduce you to the work that will take place in this vicinity in specific, but it's a part of a much bigger project. So I'm going to cover a little project orientation, the express lanes, how they work or how they will work. Talk a little bit about our progress we've made, the construction activities that are forthcoming, and then the traffic impacts, and give you how we're going to communicate that in communication, and then we'll break into stations if you have questions still. All right, so the project orientation, the 101 Express Lane project will run from the county line, Santa Clara County line, all the way up north to 380, just north of the airport. And so those of you who are well familiar with the corridor, which I'd assume would be all of you, realize that today there is an HOV lane or a carpool lane that starts at the, well, it runs into the county at the county line and runs all the way up to Whipple and ends at Whipple. So Kiewit has already done work to provide for work in the median that will be sign structures and gantries to serve the express lane. That's in place. The infrastructure is, not the technical equipment. And now we're going to move them north, and they're going to do quite a bit more work, which I'll talk about here in a second, that will actually create a fifth lane for use as the express lane. So the purpose of the project was essentially to move more people through the corridor in the most efficient way possible. So what we wanted to do is encourage carpooling and transit. And the way you do that is you provide them with a reliable trip. And so what we're trying to do is provide reliable travel time for those who are in carpools or buses primarily. But when you do that, it opens up the lane, and if we don't fill that lane that we've now created and opened, it creates some other problems. And you'll see that in a slide here in a second. We want to get more people through, and by having the limited space, the way you get more people through is you put more people in one vehicle. Instead of single occupant vehicles, we want carpools and we want buses. We're going to use technology to do that, and ideally we do that in such a way that we don't increase congestion in the general purpose lanes throughout the corridor. All right, so when the lane functions correctly, what you will notice is that here, if we did nothing, that's the orange bar. And this is showing the travel time in minutes on the left, so the bars represent total travel time in the corridor, and then on the bottom, the time in the morning of the commute. So it starts at 6 a.m. and runs over to the 9 to 10 hour. And so if we didn't do anything, I'm going to look at the 8 to 9 hour in the middle, it would take over almost 35 minutes to drive the corridor from Whipple to 380. Once the project's built, the express lanes in purple would take just over 12 minutes to drive in the corridor. So a much shorter travel time for buses and carpools, and ultimately to fill the lane, toll-paying vehicles. And that's the benefit in the southbound, and then similarly we have the northbound benefit, and that's more pronounced in the evening. So again, if you're looking at the 5 to 6 in the middle, almost 60 minutes to drive it without a project. With the project, a little over 12 minutes. All right, so that's why we're doing the project. The way we're going to do it north of Whipple is we're going to connect the auxiliary lanes. So today, an auxiliary lane is a lane that begins at an on-ramp and it ends at the next successive off-ramp. So that means that we have width here, and we're going to connect it. We're going to basically extend the lane from one end to the other and create a through lane under the interchanges without actually having to change the interchanges or replace the bridge structures. So what that looks like is this.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So it's what you're saying is that the lane that goes on, that gets onto the off-ramp,
Yep.
that's going to be the fifth lane?
Yes. Yeah.
So net, you're going to have the same number of lanes you have now?
No, we're gonna build a new auxiliary lane next to the existing auxiliary lane. So you're gonna end up, so this gray here is the existing auxiliary lane, which gets connected to the auxiliary lane over here to make a fifth through lane, and then we're gonna construct new auxiliary lanes on the outside. Yeah, good question. All right, so timetable. Right now, we're getting ready to have Kiewit begin the work in the north segment, north of Whipple. When I say north, I'm talking north of Whipple. So the north of Whipple is the pink part of this graphic, and the southern part, south of Whipple, is the blue on the bottom. So we are just about ready to wrap up construction on the south in February. The work on the contract that's currently going on will pretty much wrap up. And then just before we finish that, or at the same time, we'll begin construction in the north. We'll actually have some activity in January as well, but the bulk of the work will start in the February timeframe. What hasn't happened yet on the southern side is we haven't actually begun yet to install all the toll equipment. There's a fair amount of electronic equipment that has to go in place. That will begin in 2020, and the lane will actually open in 2021, concurrent with the VTA. Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority has a similar project south of the county line. And so when they open, we'll open, and then we'll have essentially 13 miles of continuous express lane into Santa Clara County. And then we'll open the northern half of 16 miles, and then we'll have nearly 30 miles of express lane. So the work that's going to start here in February will finish, the construction will finish in January of 2022, and then we will open it in October 2022 as an express lane. So there'll be about a year difference between opening south of Whipple and opening north of Whipple. All right, so a little bit about express lanes. So this diagram illustrates why we're doing an express lane instead of a carpool lane. So today, a carpool is defined as 2 or more people in a car. And at many points today in the lane, it's congested and it's traveling at about the same speed as the general purpose lanes. That's an impacted carpool lane, and there isn't any way to improve the carpool incentive by having a lane that breaks down like the general purpose lanes do. So if we didn't have an express lane, the only solution is to change to a 3+ requirement. Well, when you do that, that suddenly moves cars out of the lane, so much so that we would have quite a bit of space in the lane, unused. And then people would wonder, well, why can't I get in that lane? Why can't I use that lane? Well, what the express lane allows us to do is it allows us to put single occupant vehicles and two-person vehicles in the lane for a fee. So they will pay a toll electronically to be in the lane, which allows us to use the lane optimally in a way that allows us to maintain speed and get that travel time reliability that we need to incentivize people to be in carpools and in buses. So that's how the lane is designed to work. And it will do that electronically. So we will have throughout the corridor the big sign in the middle that has the prices, so people will know what the toll is that they will pay if they choose to use the lane to go a certain distance. And then right behind that sign is an antenna. And the antenna is what will read the fast track transponder, which is that device in the bottom right. So you'll have to have a fast track transponder to make use of the lane if you're a carpool specifically. If you're a single occupant or a clean air vehicle, if you don't have that, you'll pay by your license plate. And you'll pay the full fee if you do that. All right, so this is another picture of what is referred to as the flex tag, which allows the driver in the car, to indicate to the system whether they're a single occupant, a 2-person, or a 3+ vehicle. And the reason that's significant is that if you want the discount, which is free if you're a carpool, 3+ or more, you need to have this tag to tell the system that you're 3. If you don't have this tag, the system will assume that you are a single occupant, and it will charge you the full toll. All right, and then I often get questions about how the lanes will be enforced. We will have 5 locations in the corridor where we actually allow the CHP to be in the median to observe the occupancy of the vehicles. And we will provide them with information on those vehicles as to what their tag says. So if their tag says there are 3, but there's only 1 person in the car, the CHP would pull out from the enforcement area that's in the median, pull them over, and then issue them a ticket. And that will be helped by having electronic equipment to both read license plates. Eventually, there'll probably be technology to count people in the car, but that doesn't exist today in a reliable form. All right, so then in terms of progress, where have we been? Well, we've done quite a bit of work in the south. So we actually have, as I already mentioned, pretty much finished the construction in the south, and we're shifting to the electronic toll equipment design and then the installation, as I mentioned. And we just finalized our agreement. We're finalizing our contract with Kiewit to do the work in the north, and they will begin that work here in mid-February. So you've seen that already on the previous slide. So this is some of the work, and you can see similar photos or some other photos on the boards back there. The work here in the upper left, the placement of the concrete barrier is taking place today. So we're moving, Kiewit is moving railing that's in the south to the north. So right now it's being put back away from the shoulder, kind of as temporary storage, and then it will move into its position before they begin construction. So that's happening now. Then we'll be working on doing work in the median and demolishing after we do work on the outside shoulder, which I'll talk about in a second. We are demolishing 3 sound walls, so we'll be using a device somewhat similar to what's up there. And then we'll be replacing those sound walls. So that's one of the things we wanted to talk with you about tonight and the reason we're here. All right, so the construction activity or the construction sequence. The contractor will do the work, Kiewit will do the work on the outside first to connect the auxiliary lanes. Because once we have the auxiliary lanes complete, now we have 5 through lanes, and then we will use the median lane to create space to do the work in the median. So the outside work will take place in the 2020 calendar year for the most part. Towards the end of that year, they'll shift to the outside, and then they will work, into the inside, and then they will work through much of 2021 on the median, which is the removal of much of the existing barrier, the placement of the signs, and replacing the barrier. So what that means construction-wise is that we do have some trees and vegetation we're moving in the corridor. We don't have any in this stretch of this San Mateo stretch north of 92. We don't have any vegetation we're moving. We do have some trees south of 92 that we're removing. And throughout the corridor, we're moving a little over 150 trees, or about 150 trees. The tallest of those are all eucalyptus trees. We are going to relocate a sewer line, and that work is actually there at this station for what we refer to as Sound Wall 6. And then we do have to connect all this electronic equipment to power and to communications. So we do have hookups various places along the corridor where we're crossing local streets. So we do have some work like that. And we do have some work like that here in San Mateo. We will be removing and replacing pavement. In order to connect the auxiliary lanes, we do have quite a bit of pavement work that we have to do on the outside. So that's what will take place pretty much in 2020. And then eventually we'll demolish the median barrier, and then we'll actually resurface the roadway before we finish. By the time that's all done and said and done, we will then replace the trees that we've removed with trees elsewhere in the corridor. All right, so the 3 walls that we are here today to talk about are what we refer to as Wall 4, which is south of 3rd Street. And so that's the station in the far back. Then the wall there in the middle, Wall 6, is just south of Doré. So it runs largely between 3rd and Doré. And then the 3rd wall is Wall 7, which is north of Doré up towards, East Poplar. So those are the three sections of wall that we are demolishing so that we can move them away from the freeway. So we're taking 4 to 6 feet, depending on location, of the frontage road. And then we will build them back. And so at each station we have the schedule for that work. So you can talk with our team about questions you have about that. This is a quick slide to show you where the tree removal is in San Mateo. So this is 92 on the left here. So we're removing trees against each of the 2 sound walls south of that towards Hillsdale. So if you're sensitive to trees, you'll notice them going away. The vast majority of people who drive the corridor might not even notice they're gone. There are not that many of them. All right, so traffic impacts. There are 2 types of impacts. There are traffic impacts on the freeway itself, and then certainly there are traffic impacts to those of you who live along the walls that are going to be torn down and replaced. So for the freeway impacts, we will do the lion's share of the work at night, and in order to access the work zones, they will need to take or close lanes, as we refer to that. So they will be closing lanes as early as 9 p.m. or closing a lane in each direction as early as 9 p.m., but picking them up between 5:30 and 6 a.m. in the morning. Now, there will be work that takes place that requires more lanes than 2, or more lanes than 1 in each direction. So when they need 2 or 3 lanes, those lanes would be closed after 10 p.m. and open before 5 a.m. And so throughout the corridor, that work will be taking place. As I indicated on the earlier slide, the work is going to take place throughout the entire corridor from Whipple all the way up to the airport. Now, in addition to that, we do have to close ramps. We can't connect the auxiliary lanes if we don't close the ramps. So when we do that work, from time to time, we'll be closing the ramps. That closure will be noticed on the ramp itself. But in addition to that, we have some public notices we're going to provide, and I'll show you that in a second. And then we will have temporary lane closures on the streets. So South Bay Shore will get closed from time to time. We will always have at least 1 lane of traffic in operation throughout the day, but the sewer work does require a complete closure a couple of times. So if you have questions about that, that's why we have the team here. You can talk to them about those closures. And then finally, we will have 12 days of full freeway closure at night from midnight to 5 a.m. when we do it, to replace sign bridges that cross all of the lanes. And we can't replace those without closing the freeway. But that's not until 2021. That's a ways away still. All right, so here's how we want to communicate with those who are interested, including yourselves, is we will have a weekly construction information, essentially a bulletin that will update you on ramp closures, and it will be emailed to those who sign up. So if you're interested in receiving that, make sure you sign up with us back there. You can also sign up at our website, which is now reachable at 101express.com. And so I would encourage you to write that down so you can always go there for more information. We will have the ramp closure notifications on the ramp, as I mentioned, but that'll be a week to 2 weeks in advance. And then some of the cities throughout the corridor have asked us for specific additional information. So we will be providing that to the cities, and you may get that through the cities as well. So we'll have the website, but we'll also have the cities providing that information. And the sort of newsletter or the construction update email will look like this. And as I said, it will have the information on the ramp closures as they roll through the corridor. So it will change on a weekly basis. And so if you want to familiarize yourself with that, then you can kind of track as we're going along what's happening. All right, the last thing, and I failed to mention this when I was talking about the traffic lane closures. One of the things that we are going to do is provide what is referred to as an advanced warning information system about the congestion on the freeway. So when we close lanes at 9 p.m., that will cause some congestion. And that congestion will back up for a while, and then throughout the night it will abate. So what we're going to do is have sensors throughout the corridor, as this illustrates, that are tracking the speed of the traffic. And so when the speed slows, that indicates the back of the congestion, or the front, depending on how you look at it. But from the standpoint of it backs up where the lane closure is up to a point. That's the back. And then the changeable message signs will indicate that there's congestion ahead, how far ahead it is, whether it's a mile or 2 or 3 miles ahead. So people driving through the corridor will know in advance at night that there's congestion ahead of them and that they're to slow down. What we intend to do is use these signs during the day to indicate when night work will happen. So we'll use them multiple ways. So you'll drive through the corridor, you may see that from time to time. All right, so the last thing, again, just to encourage you to go to the website, and then finally to take advantage of the stations. Since you're here, we're here happy to answer as many questions as you want. I want to break up into the stations so everybody can have their questions answered in the area that's pertinent to you. And if you have questions about the project, I'm happy to answer them. Feel free to come on up and talk with me. And with that, thank you for coming.